Hey everyone, welcome back to Renewed and Redeemed. There was a little bit of a delay in scheduling with my guest that I had planned for this episode 15. So instead, I thought I would jump ahead and share a little bit about all the things that we are studying in our Bible study of Esther. There's a lot of interesting things coming out that we're discovering in God's Word that maybe we hadn't seen before, or seeing it in a different way. If you don't know, I do have a Bible study that continues regularly throughout the year. Right now we're on Esther. It's actually through Renewed and Redeemed. And there's two different methods that you can get involved with it. The first one being an all-women's group that is on Facebook in a private group. And if you're interested in joining that, you can reach out to me and I will get you set up there. The second one is on my website, renew-redeem.com. And Monday through Friday, I post the daily verses and questions, and you are welcome to do the study through that. And if you would like, you can comment, and I will share some comments back. But it's completely up to you. You can do it privately, you journal it, whatever you would like to do. But that is available for free on renew-redeem.com. With that being said, I just really wanted to share some things that were hitting my heart during the study. We're only on, I think, chapter 3 right now. We're going very slow. We just go over a couple verses a day. And we chew on those verses and meditate on them and try to think about how we can apply them to our lives. And the things that are really standing out to me right now is that both Esther and Mordecai had great reason to be extremely bitter, maybe towards the world and even towards God. Esther, she lost both her parents, and that's why she was being raised by Mordecai. And she could have easily been hurt by that and decided to let that control her emotions and the direction of her life, and maybe had some bitterness towards God because of that. Like, why did God allow that? But we don't really see that. I mean, it's possible that there was some of it in her life, but we don't really see that in the chapters. We see that she is extremely honorable and obedient. And not only did she have that going on, but they were both Jews. And in that area, they were not a well-loved people group. They originally had been taken captive and brought in that area. And at that point in time in history, some of the Jews had left. Some of them had remained, but they were not people in that area that the majority of the society really liked. They were kind of low in their society and outcast in their society. That could have easily caused a lot of bitterness. And we see some of that going on in our world today, right? And then to top all that off for Esther, in the end, she was basically kind of kidnapped from her family and thrown into something that was almost like a slavery harem. And I don't think that she willingly went and volunteered for that. I think that she was forced to go. It doesn't really seem like Mordecai was really thrilled with the whole setup either. First of all, the Jews knew that they weren't supposed to be marrying or being involved with non-Jews in that way and, marriage type of situation. So that's like one thing right there. But also these girls are being prepped for basically a one-night stand with a king. And depending on what he thinks about them and how he judges them, that one-night stand may be the end of their interaction with him. They'll just be discarded. They'll never be able to be married. They'll just be kind of pushed away from him and society. And I can't imagine that those girls that was their destiny with the king really were happy about that or enjoyed their life after that. Thankfully, I guess, because we know that it was part of God's plan, Esther found favor with the king and he ended up marrying her and making her queen. But another point that she could have had bitterness towards is that we can see throughout the first 3 chapters that women in the society were not valued. They were not thought of very highly. They were just another possession. And when we see Vashti, her whole life is just turned upside down. She loses her title as queen because she decided to be in line with the society's protocol, which was that when men were having their big feasts and drinking and getting drunk, the women were not allowed to be there. That is why in the first chapter, we see that Vashti had her own feast for just the women, because during these feasts, the men and women were not supposed to mix. So when she declined the king's request to come to him in the middle of this drunken feast, she was doing what was right in her society's rules. But the king still was extremely upset and threw her away, and she loses her title, all because she was obedient to the regulations of that time. Mordecai could have also had a lot of bitterness towards the king. He obviously was concerned for Esther. We see that in the first 3 chapters where it talks about him constantly checking in on her and to find out any news about her to make sure she's okay. So he probably could have had a little bit of bitterness towards the king for that, and maybe even towards God. It could have been like, God, why is this happening to me? I thought you loved me. I thought you were going to protect me. And they could have gone down all those paths, but we don't see any of that. We actually see Mordecai show some really godly character. He overhears a plot against the king's life, and he had a choice then. He could have said, good, kill that guy off because, he did this to my niece who I love like a daughter and all these other things. And he's an ungodly man and good, I'll just let this play out. But you don't see him do that. He decided to choose to do the right thing, the godly thing, even though this king had sinned against him and his family. He decided to, through Esther, make the king aware of the plot against him, and he ended up saving the king's life. This just shows that he didn't harbor bitterness. And it shows that he was obedient to God and what God has called him to do and how he called him to live. And then we see a second thing. We see obedience on Esther's part. Mordecai asked her not to reveal who her people were, the Jews. And she obediently did that. She didn't question him and said, I don't need you anymore. I'm not a kid anymore. She was obedient to the parental figure in her life. And then we see Mordecai have obedience to God by not bowing down to Haman. And it could have been really easy to comply. It could have saved a whole bunch of problems, as we see where Haman gets upset and puts a decree out to kill all the Jews. But it was just about his knee. He could have just said, well, I'm just doing it. It doesn't mean anything. And that really got me thinking, like, what are we as believers or followers of Jesus today willing to bow down to? Are we willing to bow down to the government because they're telling us to do something? I mean, the government in this situation told Mordecai that he was required to bow down to Haman, that it was a rule. And Mordecai said no, but it was a governmental rule, but he said no. Then you see Haman really just kind of push it and kind of using like a spirit of intimidation, saying that, if you don't bow down to me, you're going to pay for it. And wow, then we see him go and say he's going to kill all the Jews. I mean, in our situation that we're facing in society today, do we see anything similar to that? Do we see a spirit of intimidation threatening us that if we don't bow down to whatever the newest mandate is and that if we don't do it, we are going to pay? And not only do we see it, I think, coming from our government, but we see it coming from maybe our friends and family and even other believers, because it's just easier to comply. It's just easier to go along with the crowd than to stand up for whatever it is we feel that God has called us to sometimes. And maybe the choice of whatever it is to do isn't so bad. It's not maybe wrong. Whereas Mordecai thought it was absolutely wrong to bow down to Haman. But maybe the situations we're facing today aren't as black and white. Maybe we're not sure if they're absolutely right or wrong, but it doesn't line up with whatever God is leading us to do. It really has me thinking about what are we willing to bow down to? And how do we handle that? Like, what do we do if all these things are coming against us? What do we do if our government is requiring us to do something that we feel like God is saying, no, don't do that? What do we do? Well, that's the other thing that I noticed in these first 3 chapters. What did the Jews do? What did Mordecai do? Well, they overcame the intimidation and threats that were coming against them by more obedience. And it wasn't just the obedience of a one-time thing. These were like simple, everyday obedience things. We see Esther being obedient and honoring the parental figure in her life. We see her honoring Mordecai's wisdom and honoring God. We see Mordecai honoring God and warning the king that his life was in danger. even though this was the guy that stole his niece away, but he chose the right thing. Every day, simple obedience adds up to big, grand things. That's what I've really been seeing in the first 3 chapters. It's not like this one-time, big, grand decision, or it can come to that. And we all know that if we are familiar with the story of Esther, that it is going to come to a big one-time decision at the end. But if we don't walk in obedience in the everyday little things that God has called us to do, we won't be ready for that one-time big thing. It's not like we can just do whatever we want, and then all of a sudden one day we're going to be faced with this huge decision, and we're just going to make the right choice because that we know it's such a huge decision. Obviously, that's possible. But I think that it more goes back to everyday simple obedience, which just strengthens that muscle of obedience, looking to God, listening to God, obeying his word, so that when we get to that big one-time decision that is life-changing, we don't even give it a second thought because we have been walking in it for so long, and it's just become so strong in our life, that obedience, that it's not a big thing anymore. That we trust God, we've seen God be faithful. And then peeking into the beginning of chapter 4, the Jews being obedient to what God is calling them to do, which is fast and pray when they're threatened. They're weeping. And honestly, that should really be our posture too with everything that's going on in this world. Fasting and praying and weeping. People are being deceived. People are being threatened. They're being gripped with fear. They are walking away from the word, from God, to become obedient to the government and whatever is the acceptable practice of the time. Whatever is accepted by society or what society is calling us to do, they are willingly or even begrudgingly complying. People are perishing if they don't know Jesus, if they have not submitted their life to Jesus. They are perishing, and that should cause us to weep. And praying. We should be taking everything to God. And fasting, humbling ourselves to God, bowing our knee to God. That's where our knee should be bowed, is to God, not the government, not social media, not any kind of worldly influences, but God. That's where we should be bowing our knee and listening to him when we fast and preparing our hearts. Letting all this fleshy, sinful nature be ripped away and looking to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, the one that strengthens us when we're weak, because he is strong when we're weak. And we see the Jews do that. So to recap from the first 3 chapters of Esther, we've seen Mordecai and Esther have every reason to be bitter, but they don't let that grip their heart. They don't let that control them. So they flee from bitterness. We see them be extremely obedient to God and all of his commands. And we see that in times of trouble and despair, they weep, they pray, and they fast. So those are the takeaways that I've seen so far. And just as a reminder, if you want to get more involved with this Bible study from Esther, you can reach out to me if you would like to join the Women's Facebook group, or you can go ahead to renew-redeem.com and find the study there. God, I just thank you that you are a protector, that we don't have to do it alone, God, that if we are obedient to you and humble ourselves before you, that you will take care of us, God, that you have a plan and you have a purpose for every little thing. I ask that you just help us to throw off any bitterness. Just take it away, God. We don't want it. We want a clean and pure heart before you. We want to have a loving heart. We want to operate out of your love and just live in your hope, your never-ending hope. And I ask you just give us boldness to do the things that you're calling us to do. We praise you, God, in your name. Amen.
Thank you for joining us today, and please consider subscribing to our podcast and sharing it with your friends. For more information on Renewed and Redeemed and to check out our Bible study, blog, and shop, please visit us at renew-redeemed.com. We'd love to hear from you if you need prayer, have a question, would like to share a testimony, or give your life to Jesus.